Well, people wonder, I mean, there's been all these kind of flavors, and I think it goes back to what Kathy said with different customers in focus. Because most distributors in this industry play with commercial, and they may be commercial industrial, it may be commercial residential, but I mean, that's kind of the glue that kind of held everybody together. And we're starting to change to have different flavors of distributors, and they're trying to be all things to all people. It's about the only thing you can take this group of diversity and everybody to agree that that's not the future, but trying to figure out where it goes. When we did a project last year in Europe looking at electrical distribution, and it was very much around being a box mover. Where here we're very much about customer intimacy, and that relationship that you're talking about. Over there, it's almost purely a logistics thing. Mm-hmm. And if you just take a look at this market, 20 years from now, are we going to see a resurgence of the small guy? I mean, can companies get too big? Where's it going to roll out in terms of the competitive nature?
I think in our country today, there's a divide between those who have decided that they're a transaction play and those who wake up every day on the other side of that and sort of migrate through, how do I get paid for the service that I add? How do I say yes and then figure out how to charge in a non-traditional way? And I really believe, that there's probably a place for both. And in both of those categories, people can run very successful businesses. I think our customers, whether they be contractors or OEMs or industrials, I don't think they have more people to support them than they had 20 years ago. Most of our customers have less internal support. And I think if you can rush to fill that void and understand and learn how to say yes and make a profit in serving the customer in a way that might be non-traditional, I think there's all sorts of plays out there for people.
Just have to understand what your value proposition is.
Exactly.
That's what it's all about.
On the other side of that, I think, part of it is also as we get back to people, I look at some of our greatest successes with customers, and the ideas that were launched came from the least likely places at our company. And I think when we think about the future, part of that in terms of gets back to our people. How do we teach innovation in our companies? How do we teach people? We've had ideas that have come from people driving fork trucks in our warehouse that have forever changed us. I mean, in millions of dollars of ways.
Really?
Absolutely. So how do you make sure every light bulb's turned on in the company? Right? So that a customer, we can say yes because we've got people that are fleet of foot. Mm-hmm. That, I think, is the challenge.
Great point.
It's interesting you said that, because one of the things I read, again, make fun of me reading, but I was reading, and it described the culture of the future, which I thought is right on point with what you just said. They said that the key to success for the future with distribution is going to be able to create an environment where your people where you enable them to think and act dynamically, and that they open up and actually view it as an open source type of network.
Wow.
Where I know, and some of the reading's not too bad, is it?
That's cool.
And I thought that really hit, because that's exactly what you're saying, is where the open source for us are all the people that work for us, the customers and the suppliers, right? And when you have an issue, is you want to create it so that when they see it, they can serve it up and get engaged and bring it to you to solve. And I think that's difficult for a lot of us, though, is to broaden that reach, to really open our sources, to start listening to all the ideas that are out there, and to really get people so they think they can contribute, they should volunteer. That's part of their responsibility as an employee.
I think what Barry said, and I think you just said the other half of it. I think every day you should wake up scared, because someone's out trying to either change it from a technology point of view, or something could change your business. And then if you take what Kathy just said, the solution, that's kind of the paradox. You have to be scared, and then you have to be comfortable in finding the solution. I mean, that's the paradox manager that we look at now, because something's out to get us every day, and it could be some new technology, some new laws, something that can really change, make us uncomfortable. And the solution lies in what Kathy just said, of being able to look, or that every light bulb's on, and to share with those people what the risk is, and everyone understand And then people start to go, you know what, if we did this, if we did that, and that's how you get those.
Because you're right, the threats are real, right? There's countries that are coming into the U.S., into our traditional space that we've never seen before. You have third-party logistics companies. I listed today the different ways to market to sell electrical products to our customers today, though in 20 years. So you've got customer market focused, right, which is a lot of us. So you offer broad product lines, you're a lot of things to a lot of people. You have highly technical engineering design focused that actually are turnkey, including provisioning and sourcing. You have online only, right? Typically it's a low value add model. You have product led, which is all about being products, selling products, usually higher margins at catalogs. You've got convenience distributors that are out there. I mentioned the third-party logistics folks that are out there that have tracking. You have some manufacturers that what I'll call a mix of functional capabilities where they offer some distribution or project management services on top of building the product, right? That's today, and I'm sure I've missed a whole bunch of them. That's what we're faced with today as distributors in our marketplace. 20 years from now, you're right. I don't know what that's going to be. And I don't have a crystal ball telling me that because I keep trying to think that too. All I know is our responsibility, at least in our organization, is to make sure that we're the best prepared we can be to not have that impact us, or that we can manage through it when it does change the dynamic, if it's coming to change our industry. And the way to do that is to make sure we remain viable, know who we are, and evolve as the business evolves.
That goes back to that fleet of foot thing.
Yeah, it does. And I might be crazy, but I think that in this tyranny of choice that we all have in our
Tyranny of
lives today.
choice?
Yeah, it's pretty good. Interesting.
I went
Pretty
to try,
heavy, huh?
I know.
I went to try to buy a pair of jeans.
He reads a lot too.
I went to try to buy a pair of jeans not long ago, and I mean, you could get 30 different. I got confused at the jeans store. I mean, there's, boot
I
cut.
only buy on Amazon now. I've completely sold out.
All right. Okay.
And you're right. There's lots of choices there too.
Yeah, well, but I mean, ultimately, I think I think we may have a greater opportunity today to make more money than we've ever had, largely because of that tyranny of choice. I think people get to a point where they say, Mike, you often say, I got a guy or I got a person, right? I just find a person. And I think people are looking, because they're busier than ever, to find a person or a company they can trust and know that when we say we're going to do it, we do it. And I think people, even in the construction sector, are willing to pay a little bit more for that if they can see the line of sight.
They won't tell you that, but
Right.
yeah.
Well, no, they won't.
Yeah,
But I mean,
yeah.
we've done a lot of work with contractors in this space, and one of the things that comes back when you work with contractors, and nobody will ever say this when there's distributors or suppliers in the room, but when the guy's putting a deal together on a project, what's most important to him is not the price.
Right.
What's most important to him is I have to know that nobody in my market's getting a better price than I'm getting. I trust this person to keep me right and keep me on point. And I mean, they're still going to negotiate, and well, I'd love to give it to you, but you're $5,000 too high on fixtures, man.
Yeah, right.
But that trust thing is a huge, huge deal, and it's just making it easier. It's how do you sort through it all? I didn't connect that. And I'm not sure a salesperson that's trained to negotiate, I mean, the thing we find is that the contractors, they always want to buy from the best distributor at the worst distributor's price.
Right.
Right.
And if you, well, it's true.
It's
I mean,
true.
if you,
Yeah,
and the contractors are better negotiators than our sales guys. You need a really sharp pencil on this, boss. We're going to make it up down the road with all
Or
the
make it up on
changes.
volume.
Make it up on volume. That's it,
I
right?
thought that was distributors. Because the other, I got it.
No, it's just a reflection back. It's just the shadows in the wall, Dominic. Shadows in the wall. Well, given all this change, it's I'm taking a lot of things away from this in terms of a lot of this, even if I'm a small distributor, I can get ahead of if I want to, in terms of the people and starting to look at the globalization, either bringing things in or going out, but just sort of, a lot of this has to do with change and managing change. And if you're taking a look at the senior leadership of the industry, and both the manufacturer and the distributor side, is there anything that kind of would hit you in terms of right now trying to figure out 20 years from now who are going to be the winners and who are going to be the losers? Is there anything you can see today that would help predict that somebody's going to be successful in all this chaos?
Other than I think those that embrace change have a better chance of winning than those that don't embrace the change. You know, that, I don't think you can predict specifically, but
Right.
if you hide from it, it'll take you over.
I think if you look at a company and you meet its leader, and then you meet the people that work with that leader, and you say to yourself, those people are a lot smarter than the leader, I think that's a sign.
That's a great point.
So if the leader's the smartest guy in the company, that's not a good sign.
That's not a good
I
sign.
don't think so.
That's not a good sign.
Any organization, and I agree, that's a great way to put it.
Boy, you said that. Did you hear how uncomfortable everybody's getting? I even saw some elbows in the ribs. So
You know, I like.
you smart guys better watch out.
I do. I think that's a great way to put it because it really is about the organization and the legacy that we leave to our organizations. Because I don't know of anybody who wants to have a company that when you leave it collapses on itself, right? So to your point, it's really about building it where, as the leader, you do become irrelevant to the success of the organization.
That's what the organizational
Right?
capacity
That's
is all
basically
about.
what it is that if the company depends on you, then you haven't done your job. If your belief is it's a long-term business proposition. You know, I tell people all the time I have a privilege to serve, right? I view leadership as a stewardship, that all of us, whoever are in leadership, we have a certain period of time on that spectrum of your company where your job is to make sure you do what you can to develop the leadership and the talent that the company will continue on better when you're gone than when you took over, right? And so you look at it and you say, all right, I've got 10 years or whatever it is that I get to serve. What do I do to make sure that the people behind me are better than I am? The people that behind me have the same passion, though, for the business and the same values. That's one thing I don't negotiate on at all, are the values. And I want to be able to live in my retirement well because of what they can do. Just like those that have retired ahead of me, my job is to help serve them also, right? And if you, as a leader, make yourself irrelevant, that's the biggest compliment I think that you can give to somebody is, you know, you're now irrelevant. Now, I know that sounds kind of rude, but as a leader, isn't that our job? At least that's the way I view it. And I have some of my young leadership team here, by the way, in the audience. And I can tell you, they are smarter than me. They're always pushing me. They're looking out for the long-term benefit of the company, and they have the core values. And I'm not just saying that because they're in the room, I'd say it behind their back. And I think that's important.
One thing that, and Bill Weisberg sends his regrets, he actually demonstrated what we were talking about here with values, and he had a family issue and put family ahead of work. In fact, he didn't even make his own AD meeting earlier this week. But one of the things Bill wanted to talk about was values, and all three of you have brought up the term in multiple times in this conversation. Are we talking, when we say values, and I just like to put a little bit more meat on it in terms of, are we talking about the American experiment? When you say values, what does that mean? And I'm not trying to get a group hug or anything.
I know, I feel it coming on here.
Well, but I mean, the word gets thrown around, and yet you hear big companies use the word values, and then they get indicted by the SEC. And,
Absolutely.
And I mean, I'm trying. When we say values in this industry, for this.
Every company is going to be different, but you know, I can only talk about our company, and we put together what we put our guiding principles, and I think your guiding principles is that if you stopped an employee on the elevator in the street and said, "What's your company about?" they should be able to answer you in the time of we call an elevator ride. Okay, so in a couple of seconds, someone should be able to tell you what your company is about. So I think it's nice to talk about values, but I think you have to write them down and say what those values are. And you know, the first one, and again, I'm just looking at our company, but the first one is treat each other with respect. Okay, and start from there, and then so you talk about how you build trust. I think if you live to your guiding principles, you'll build trust. So that's one aspect, and I think you have to have values, you know, to the planet, and I think you have to have values to your competitors, and so I think it all goes around honesty and consistency, and saying what you mean, and then let your actions speak louder than your words. And I think that
But being clear and writing it down so
and so your employees know it.
Yeah.
And there's no debate about what the values of your company are. And they should be everywhere in your building, and they should be on your website. And if people have an issue with them, you should be willing to discuss them and add and subtract to them as the situation presents itself. So I think that's what values are. Who are you?
I'd say, building on that, is values are also what you demonstrate. It's easy. We write ours down too, and our values have been in place forever. I mean, we have the same values that when we were founded. But it really comes in the way you conduct yourself daily and your business dealings. First time that you take an order that doesn't feel right, you've sacrificed your values. If your values are integrity, honesty, and whatever, and you know, as especially leaders, I tell our folks, not every order is a good order. I'll never forget this one story. There was a young sales guy who was up and coming, outstanding. He's now one of our sales leaders, outstanding. And I was vice president of corporate accounts, so he went with me on a call. And we went into a contract negotiation. It was a large contract, $20 million, large contract. And I didn't like it. It just didn't feel good. And I don't care what anybody said. It just didn't feel good. And we went in, and this guy really wanted to write this contract. Think about it. It's huge. And it just didn't feel right. And so I met the leadership team, and we were talking about it. And I did everything I needed to do to make sure that we didn't write that order. So the young guy leaves, and he's horrified. You know, God, I bring somebody from headquarters, what a loser. They cost me the job, it's one of those overhead, right? The company was named Enron.
No.
And the young man said to me, "Thank you." He said, it didn't feel right, it didn't make sense, there was something off, you didn't like the people, and he said, I didn't even think about it. I didn't open up and sense that. You know, I didn't feel, when you shook their hand, you wanted to wipe your hand off. You know, I mean, the people we were working with, not everybody there. So that's, I don't want to say that, not the whole company was bad, but the people we were dealing with. And he said, you taught me a lesson that, you know, business is more than just writing that order. That's the kind of stuff when you look at values. As leaders, if you don't practice what you preach, it doesn't matter what's on paper, right?
You have to practice it. You know, the old cliche, how do you behave when no one's looking?
Right.
You know, and that's what your values are.
Right.
And I think you have to celebrate people in the company who challenge you when they see things aren't right.
Absolutely.
Who challenge you, who say, hey, this isn't who we are. You know, even when it's a really tough decision, you know, people who look and say, you know, you say you're X, but we see Y here.
Right.
You know, and I think how we react to that makes or breaks us.
Wow. You know, it's kind of interesting to me. There's going to be a lot of things different 20 years from now. And all of you that are sitting here listening to this, take your current age, add 20 years to it, and figure out what you're going to be doing in this industry.
Retired.
Hopefully
Everybody's,
still breathing.
well, there's an old saying that old men always stay too long, you know, so I'm a legend in my own mind. But what's kind of interesting to me is that even with all this chaos and the young people and different kinds of sales forces and the value models, that my sense is that all that value stuff and that trust, that's not going to be one bit different. You know, people will self-select themselves, and all that stuff's still going to matter. We have basically blown through our time, and before I let these guys out, one of the things I'd like to do is just kind of go around and see if there's a question you want these folks to think about. If they're thinking about if they're going to be in the industry 20 years or trying to prepare somebody to take over after they leave, what would be the question they need to be pondering and thinking about to ensure a bright success?
I'd be glad to start because I think about it every day. When I walk into the shop and I look into the eyes of one of our employee owners, I look at them and often think to myself, have we prepared ourselves in a way that allows that person to freely express an idea that could forever change us? Whether that person be, it doesn't matter, maybe even in the least likely place.
Have I prepared?
Have we prepared the organization in a way so that that person on the fork truck or answering the phone or wherever is free to express and feels like they work at a place where they could make a difference that could forever change us?
Very good.
And that's a tough gut check, because I look around
I
our
like that.
company and I think, boy, we're not there yet, you know? How do we get there?
You don't need us after
That's
that.
right.
That was good, yeah.
Yeah.
Dominic, you got,
No, I
what kind of
think-
hits you?
What's that?
What kind of hits you as far as a question for these folks?
Well, you know, I'm big on the organizational capacity. I would ask myself the question, does my company or have the organizational capacity to accomplish what we want to accomplish? And part two is, does everyone know what we want to accomplish? Because if you're the only one that knows it, don't expect them to help you get there. So you got to share where you want to get, and then make sure that you have the capacity to get there.
Kathy, how about you?
Well, what I think about is and what I encourage others is, do we as an organization, and it's very similar to yours, but not quite as well articulated, do we have the organization, have we created the environment where our people wake up every day and think about what more that they can do to improve themselves, their unit, and the entity as a whole, the community and the customers, and be willing to listen enough that they can change, because it's all about agility in the future, right? It's ability to change when you need to without sacrificing your core business, your core values, who you are as a company. And I think about that a lot, and I've said this to our team too. My legacy is going to be to make sure we create an organization, or at least make sure everybody understands they have a personal stake in the success of something bigger than themselves. And I think as employee owners or as people who own their own companies, that's something that we all need to think about regularly.
I'll throw a question out at you as well. And all of you have customers that are in your sweet spot, that are very sticky to you. And they buy from you and they're sticky with you for a reason. And that reason doesn't have anything to do with relationship, quality people, or quality products. All those things are a part of it. And if you really want to be successful and deliver value, you need to understand what value you're really providing those customers, and what you think you're selling in most cases is not what they're actually buying. So I'd go find out. Please join me in thanking our panelists for spending 90 minutes with us.
Thank you.
Well done, guys. Well done.